4 years of sacrifice, 1 act of defiance, and the strength to rebuild from the wreckage. I was in the hospital, lying there with a broken leg after a car accident, when I saw a post from my boyfriend, Peter. He was at a party, grinning next to his ex-girlfriend, Amanda. The caption read, "Finally free from the needy drama queen and her constant demands." We'd been together for 4 years. I didn't comment, but my phone wouldn't stop vibrating the next morning, with desperate texts and calls from his mother begging me to reconsider. Here's the thing, Peter and I had been together for 4 years, and if I were to describe our relationship in one word, it would be exhausting. It was like being on a journey where the guide abandons you halfway, and you're left hauling everyone's luggage. We met when I volunteered at a community garden restoration project for my work. I was assigned to the composting team, and Peter, the self-proclaimed compost king, was in charge. The name itself should have been a warning, but I was charmed by his passion for composting. He had this whole speech about how breaking things down was the first step toward building something beautiful, and I, being the plant-loving sap that I am, thought it was poetic. Fast forward 4 years, and now I realize that the only thing truly decomposing was my self-respect. Let me give you a glimpse of how he'd helped with rent, exactly 7 times in 4 years. My name alone was on the lease because Peter's credit had been damaged for the past 4 years. And as for work? Well, Peter was between jobs 60% of the time we'd been together. When he did have money, it went toward his gaming setup, new clothes, or nights out with his friends. His requests to borrow my car were more frequent than him asking how my day was. But I was in love. I made excuses. He was finding himself, right? We all make these excuses when we're dating someone who's still a child in an adult's body. Then, last week, everything changed. I got into a car accident. Some idiot ran a red light and T-boned my car. I ended up with a broken leg, 3 fractured ribs, and a concussion. The doctor said I was lucky it wasn't worse, but I sure didn't feel lucky. Peter came to visit me in the hospital once. For 20 minutes. He told me that hospitals gave him anxiety and that he needed to process the trauma in his own way. I mean, I was the one with the broken leg, but I guess my trauma didn't count. My best friend, Rachel, stayed with me, though. She slept in that uncomfortable hospital chair for 3 nights. She helped me to the bathroom, brought me real food, and even washed my hair in the tiny sink because I couldn't shower. That's what friendship looks like. I was heavily medicated, lying in bed, when Rachel noticed something strange on her phone. She tried to hide it, but I could tell something was off. I grabbed her phone, admittedly rude of me, but hey, pain meds make me aggressive. And what did I find? Peter at a party with Amanda, his arm around her, and the caption, "Finally free from the needy drama queen and her constant demands." I froze. 4 years. 4 whole years of emotionally and financially supporting this man, putting up with his finding himself phases, his gaming addiction, his inability to even clean a toilet properly, and this is what he posts when I'm literally in the hospital? The worst part was the comments. Friends of ours were saying things like, "Glad you're happy, man," or "You deserve better." Better? Where were the people saying, "Isn't your girlfriend in the hospital right now?" I didn't comment. I didn't call or text. I just processed. And while I processed, I remembered something important: my name was the only one on the lease. So, I made some calls. I contacted my landlord and explained the situation. I called my brother and cousin, and we made a plan. Fast forward to yesterday. Peter had come by the apartment a few times while I was staying with Rachel during my recovery, but he had no idea what was coming. My brother, David, and 2 of his friends helped me with phase 1 of my plan. We packed up every single one of Peter's belongings, every crusty sock, every limited edition action figure, every gaming console, every baseball card, his precious craft beer collection, everything, and threw it all in the dumpster behind the apartment complex. Not the recycling bin, the dumpster. I figured the compost king could decompose with his trash, where he truly belonged. I know it might seem harsh, but here's the thing: Peter hadn't paid rent in 3 months. The landlord had been sending notices, but I'd been hiding them, embarrassed that my boyfriend couldn't contribute. I had picked up extra freelance work to cover our bills while he networked for opportunities. You know what Peter was actually doing instead of visiting me in the hospital? He was interviewing for a job that I had helped him get through my network. A job he was supposed to start next week. But that didn't happen. Let me just say, the hiring manager is my former college roommate's brother, and he received some very interesting information about Peter's financial history and reliability, including screenshots of Peter's social media posts celebrating his freedom. That morning, my phone exploded with texts from Peter. "Where's my stuff? Are you serious? You can't do this to me." The tone shifted from angry to pleading, and then finally, his mother called me, crying and begging me to reconsider. I didn't give her the satisfaction. So, there I was, sitting on Rachel's couch, my broken leg elevated on pillows, while Peter's mother, Deborah, went into full damage control mode. She called me crying, saying I needed to reconsider what I had done. She told me that Peter made a mistake, but he didn't deserve his life to be ruined over it. Apparently, Peter had been telling her that I had been controlling his finances and isolating him from his friends and family. I couldn't help but laugh when I heard that. Me? Controlling his finances? This was the same man who once spent all of our grocery money on a limited edition gaming keyboard and who borrowed $3,000 from me for a business opportunity that turned out to be a failed cryptocurrency scheme. And isolating him from friends and family? Please. I planned his birthday parties. I bought presents for his family. I drove him to his family gatherings when his car was repossessed. But according to Deborah, I was the one isolating him. Classic gaslighting. But I didn't hang up on her, even though every fiber of my being wanted to. Instead, I asked her a simple question: when was the last time Peter paid rent? There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then she admitted, he told me you two had an arrangement where you handled the household bills and he covered other expenses. I asked, what other expenses, exactly? More silence. Then, finally, she said, well, I'm not privy to your financial arrangements. At that point, I laid it out for her. I told her about the $177,000 in credit card debt I had racked up covering Peter's share of the expenses. I told her how I had been working overtime and taking on extra freelance jobs to keep us afloat while Peter spent his time playing video games and networking. I told her about how I had to sell my grandmother's jewelry last year to cover rent when Peter promised me he had money coming in, and that money never materialized. Deborah's silence spoke volumes. Then she said something that shocked me, but he said he's been supporting you. He said you lost your job, and he's been carrying you financially. Lost my job? I've been at the same job for 6 years with 2 promotions. Meanwhile, Peter had 7 jobs in 4 years, and the longest one lasted about 3 months. I didn't bother to argue. Instead, I told her I would email her copies of my bank statements, rent receipts, and the text messages that would clarify the situation. I also mentioned the social media posts Peter made while I was in the hospital, those posts she claimed to know nothing about. The conversation ended with Deborah saying she needed to speak with Peter and would get back to me. She hasn't called since. Meanwhile, the great dumpster disposal took place as planned. I couldn't physically move all of Peter's stuff myself, after all, I was still recovering from a broken leg, but my brother David and 2 of his friends stepped in. They helped me pack up Peter's prized possessions. We started with his gaming setup, 3 monitors, his custom $2,800 PC, his figurines still in boxes, because he believed they'd be worth more that way, and his signed sports memorabilia that he refused to let me hang because it didn't match the decor. We didn't break anything intentionally. We didn't destroy his clothes or smash his electronics. We simply relocated them to where they belonged, in the dumpster. The compost king could be with his trash, exactly where he belonged. I did keep a box of potentially important things, his birth certificate, social security card, a few family photos, and his medical records. I stored those with the landlord, who was fully on my side after seeing the social media posts and hearing my side of the story. The landlord even helped me change the locks on the apartment, just in case Peter came by again. And, of course, Peter did come by. He showed up twice the next day, demanding to be let in. The second time he threatened to call the police, but he disappeared when the landlord suggested they call the cops together to discuss Peter's non-payment of rent. It's funny how people scatter when you shine a light on them, isn't it? While all of this was happening, I found out that Peter had been interviewing for a job. A job I had helped him get through my network. He was supposed to start next week, but that didn't happen. The hiring manager, a friend of mine, had gotten a thorough picture of Peter's financial history, including the social media posts where he celebrated being free from his needy girlfriend. After hearing all the details, the job offer was rescinded. Peter didn't know that yet, of course. But he found out soon enough. The next morning, my phone exploded with texts from Peter. Where's my stuff? Are you serious? You can't do this to me. Then, the tone shifted. It went from anger to desperation. Baby, please, I'm sorry. I was just drunk and stupid. Amanda doesn't mean anything to me. I was just dealing with the stress. Please, call me back. I love you so much. We can work this out. You're the only one I want. And then, of course, came the messages from his mother, Deborah. This time, there were 17 calls and multiple voice messages, all crying and pleading for me to reconsider. He's a good boy, please don't ruin his life. Apparently, she had learned about the job situation, and she called me vindictive and cruel for how I was handling things. Honestly, I felt a bit bad for her. She was clearly in denial about who Peter really was, but 4 years of me giving everything to a man who couldn't even be bothered to visit me more than once in the hospital, who celebrated being free from me while I was still in a cast, made me realize this was the closure I needed. I didn't reply to Peter. I didn't answer Deborah. I just let them stew in their guilt. Instead, I focused on moving forward. The lease on the apartment was up next month, and I wasn't going to renew. I was moving in with Rachel until I found a new place. A fresh start, away from all the reminders of Peter, his gaming chair, and his broken promises. I'd had enough. The plan was already in motion. My brother and his friends had helped with the first step, getting rid of all of Peter's belongings. But phase 2 was a bit more intricate. Peter had been living off me for the better part of 4 years, contributing nothing financially, and now I was going to make sure he couldn't get away with it. And just like that, things started to fall into place. By the time Peter got around to calling me, everything was already set in motion. My brother and I had already called my landlord, told them the situation, and had everything documented. I called my cousin, who's a lawyer, and asked about my options. Turns out, since Peter's name wasn't on the lease and he hadn't contributed financially in any significant way, he had little recourse. And that's when Peter made his next move. He started sending me emails. Long, sorrowful emails about how he had been reflecting and realized all his mistakes. He claimed he wanted to make things right, that he was ready to commit and be a real partner. It only took a car accident, months of financial exploitation, public humiliation on social media, and the loss of all his possessions for Peter to have this epiphany. But it wasn't just emails. Peter's friends started messaging me too. Remy, his college roommate, reached out, apologizing for not seeing who Peter really was. He told me that Peter had been staying on his couch, crying about losing me, and that he was planning some grand gesture to win me back. I thanked Remy for the warning, but I wasn't interested in any more of Peter's drama. At this point, I was just done. And then came the grand gesture. I'm sure you're wondering what ridiculous thing Peter did next, and honestly, it was as bad as I expected. One afternoon, I was at Rachel's place, scrolling through apartment listings, when there was a knock on the door. Rachel went downstairs to check, and she came back up looking like she had just seen a ghost. She was holding a compost bin. A literal plastic container filled with dirt, worms, and what appeared to be kitchen scraps. On top of the mess, there was a handwritten note that said, like compost, our love can break down and rebuild into something stronger. I'm decomposing my old self to become the man you deserve. Please give us another chance to grow together. I couldn't even process it at first. My jaw dropped, and I just stared at the bin, unsure whether I was going to laugh or cry. Was this a joke? A compost bin? Really? Rachel snapped a picture of me standing next to it, bewildered, and posted it to her Instagram with the caption, "When your BFF's ex thinks worms are the way to a woman's heart." It was probably one of the funniest things I'd seen in ages. But wait, it gets better. Inside the compost bin was a small velvet box, and when I opened it, there was a ring. It was clear plastic, with a fake diamond, and the gold band was already turning green. And inside the band was an engraving, 042221. I stared at it. And then it hit me. That was the birthday of his ex, Amanda. Peter had literally given me a recycled ring, a ring he had probably bought for Amanda and never gave to her. And now he was trying to give it to me in a compost bin. The audacity. I texted him a single sentence, "The compost bin is exactly where our relationship belongs, breaking down among the worms and garbage." His response? More begging. The ring was just temporary. "I'm going to buy you a real one soon, I promise." The date was the day I realized I loved you. Please, I'm sorry. I didn't respond. But Rachel, my hero, took the compost bin down to the dumpster behind her building and sent him a video of her tossing it out. And that was the end of the grand gesture. At this point, I had done everything I could to remove Peter from my life. But as you can probably guess, the drama didn't stop there. I had no idea how much worse things could get, but Peter managed to find a new way to escalate things: public shaming. Peter created a GoFundMe page titled, "Homeless After Girlfriend's Revenge," where he spun a completely fabricated story about how I stole his money, threw away family heirlooms after a small argument, and was now leaving him homeless. In the photos, he looked sad, slumped on what was clearly Remy's couch, claiming he needed $5,000 to get back on his feet. It didn't take long for the whole thing to implode. The fundraiser lasted a mere 6 hours before it was taken down. Why? Because Rachel, David, and a whole group of mutual friends reported it for fraud. To top it off, several people commented with links to my Reddit posts, including the details about everything Peter had done. The grift was exposed, and watching it unravel was like watching a house of cards collapse. Peter's response was predictable. He showed up at my old apartment building, throwing a tantrum in the lobby, demanding that he be let in. The doorman refused, and when the police were called, Peter disappeared before they could arrive. He didn't get his things, and he didn't get any sympathy from anyone. As far as the people at my apartment building were concerned, Peter wasn't a victim. He was just another man who had tried to take advantage of someone for far too long. After this, Peter tried to pull one more stunt, calling me 37 times in the span of 2 hours. He left desperate voicemails begging for a chance to talk, claiming this was all a misunderstanding and that he was going to pay me back. But then came the worst one, the one that made me hesitate for a moment. I might do something desperate if you don't call me back. That last message was a bit too much. I had already had enough of his emotional manipulation, but this felt different. So, I called a wellness check on him. I gave Remy's address to the police, and they reported back that he was fine, just emotional, and they recommended he seek mental health services. Apparently, Peter had reached a point where his toxic behavior couldn't be ignored anymore. But things didn't stop there. The drama continued to unfold, and it was like watching Peter spiral downward in every way possible. Remy later texted me to let me know Peter had stolen $200 from his wallet, and when Remy found out, he changed the locks. Even in the midst of losing everything, Peter couldn't stop himself from taking what wasn't his. Now, here we are. Peter's living in a string of acquaintances' couches, his reputation in tatters, his friends disappearing, his family no longer willing to bail him out, and his job prospects limited. As for me, I'm finally healing, physically and emotionally. My leg is recovering, and I can now move around with a walking boot. I bought a used car, which I've named Freedom, and I'm settling into my new apartment. It's smaller than my old place, but it has a tiny balcony where I've already started my container garden. The building has an elevator, thank goodness, and it's secured with cameras. I'm finally in control of my own life again. I spent so long worrying about Peter, about fixing him, about making his problems my own. But now? I'm focusing on myself. The toxic chapter that was my relationship with Peter has come to a close. I'm no longer carrying his weight or cleaning up his messes. I'm moving forward. The final piece of closure came when Peter's mother, Deborah, reached out one last time. She invited me to lunch at a place with ramp access for my leg. I wasn't expecting it, but I agreed. What followed was an unexpectedly honest conversation. Deborah admitted that she had been blinded by her love for her son, and she apologized for enabling his behavior. She confessed that Peter had been lying to her too, claiming he was supporting me financially when, in reality, it was the other way around. She also revealed something shocking. She had given Peter over $155,000 in the past 2 years for emergencies that now she realized were fabricated. She apologized repeatedly for all the harm he had caused, not just to me, but to herself as well. This conversation gave me an unexpected sense of closure. It wasn't about forgiveness, it was about understanding. Deborah wasn't a perfect mother, but at least she was taking responsibility. Before we parted ways, she handed me an envelope. Inside was $2,000 in cash. This doesn't begin to cover what he owes you, she said, but it's what I can do right now. I initially refused, but she insisted, saying, this isn't from Peter. This is from me, because I failed as a mother. If I raised someone who would treat you this way. I accepted the money, and I used it to furnish my new apartment. A fresh start. A new life, free of Peter's chaos. I want to thank all of you here for your support, for your advice, and for reminding me that I deserve better. I wasn't alone in this. This community helped me find the strength to get through one of the hardest periods of my life. Now, I'm looking ahead, not back. The drama's over. Peter is gone. And I'm finally free to heal, grow, and build a life without his toxicity holding me back. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. This will be my final update. I'm moving forward, and I couldn't be more relieved. Take care, everyone. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.